Hello everyone. Today our guest is artist Ravikumar Kashi. He is one of India's most compelling contemporary artists, known for his interdisciplinary practice that moves fluidly across painting, printmaking, sculpture, and artist books. His works probes the very mechanics of meaning making, transforming paper into sculptural forms and reimagining language as a tactile visual experience that changes how we read and perceive the world. Thank you so much for joining for Tuesday Talks, Ravikumar Kashi sir. It's a pleasure
Yeah,
to
my
see you.
pleasure, my pleasure. Because I would always like to talk about my works and share my thoughts and thinking about my work, etc. So it's a pleasure to be here. Yeah.
So, sir, I was reading through your interviews and your conversations, and this is a quote. Let me quote you. I just had this intense desire to be an artist and paint and engage with the medium. So, this is what you said when you were asked about how your fascination with art started. So, would you elaborate a little bit on this intense desire and how it has transformed over the years? Because you have been working for more than 40 years now.
Uh, I would say the intensity has not really come down in a way because I'm still at it. And just to bring back an incident from my childhood, my father had a typing shop in Malleshwaram. That is one of the areas in Bangalore. And then just opposite, diagonally opposite to my father's office, was the art school. That is the Karnataka Chitrakala Parishad. And as a child, I would just amble there, go in and see people painting, all the models which are kept, and so things like that. I think those are some of the earliest kind of exposure to art art school to me. So that fascination, which I think which started at that time, and I used to do what is called hobby kind of hobby art, if you want to call that. When I was in primary school, middle school, and when I was in high school also, and there was a school called Ken School of Art in Bangalore. It is not very active anymore. So I used to go there in my high school days as a hobby student. In the weekend, I would go there, whatever they had arranged. If there was a still life, I would do the still life. If there was a live study, I would do the live study and things like that. So it started like that, but there was this enormous fascination for painting, and creating an image and things like that. So much so that I had gone to meet the principal of the Ken School of Art, R.M. Harper, who later became my teacher after I finished my seventh standard. He said, no, you have to finish your 10th standard minimum. At that time, that was the minimum. Now it's PUC or 12th standard. So he said, till you finish the 10th standard, you can come to me as a hobby student. That's how I continued being a hobby student. So the fascination which started at that time has remained. Uh, and it's very difficult for me also why that fascination started and how it started. There were triggers, and as like the art school which was there in front of my father's office, or the art school which I went, and then there was this Kavan Park, this children's play area where they did summer workshops. I used to go there. So those were the initial triggers. But after those initial triggers, when I joined the art school, um, the fascination is just going up and up, and it doesn't feel like I am. Uh, I can say I still don't feel like it's enough, and I want to stop now or something like that. That kind of feeling has never come to me. The upcoming days, upcoming work, which is always some new idea, some new thing which you want to do. So it keeps going like that. So it is from one to the second one, third one. Yeah, it goes on like that. So at the way it is going, at least for another 2 3 decades, I'll be very active and working. So though I cannot pinpoint how that the fascination started, but I can very clearly see that it has not slowed down, and it is still intensely, in my being. So
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. Sir,
Yeah. It
along
was
with the
partly, I would say, within me. It was partly within me the desire to paint and engage with art, and partly I think it was kind of supported by outside. So it's a combination of the two, I suppose. Yeah.
So, sir, you are a full-fledged artist and you are a teacher as well. You teach architecture and you have studied printmaking. So, and you are a prolific writer and you have published books as well. So, I was going through some of your articles and I saw that you have done some lectures on art education, and you have said that as the teachers, the art education in India, we have to ask the question, am I what am I giving to the student? Am I giving the fruit or the seed? So would you like to elaborate on what your ideas on how to sort of reinvigorate the Indian fine arts education?
Okay, so that was a seminar in Goa. There was a trust which is not functional anymore, called Foundation for Indian Art and Education. I was part of the trust for some time. We had a seminar on art education in Goa, and then in that seminar, few years ago, I had mentioned this idea that in the art schools, in most of the art schools nowadays, it has become teacher centric, and there is very little learning that is happening. In the sense that teacher says, "See, I have this experience. I know this is how it works. This is a good fruit to eat." So that is the kind of thing. So uh, i- instead of saying this is a possible way of going forward, you should try on your own and then explore. So that would be a way of giving a seed where the student is expected to bring her own interests and resources and involvement and all that. And over a period of time, that becomes a tree or whatever, and grows into a sustained practice. Large extent of Indian art education, other than few schools here and there, it's teacher centric in the sense that there is more teaching happening than learning. So when it becomes learning centric, then the student becomes very active. She has got an agency to question the teacher, which doesn't happen nowadays quite a bit. So the teacher's experience gets transferred as a known knowledge to the student, instead of student trying to explore her own path, and then making mistakes in the way that doesn't matter, but teacher being a facilitator or a supporting kind of role. It becomes like if the student asks too many questions, the teacher would say, "Do you think you know better than me? No, you shut up and listen to me." That is the kind of, if not directly said, but that is the kind of environment that is created. Yeah, the other extreme is, oh, I give my student a lot of freedom, where there is no design in the class. Design as in the teacher doesn't know where the class is going, but students are doing something on their own. But that is also not useful. You need some amount of direction that is given by the teacher in terms of where it can go, depending on which class they are from, like a first semester to a end semester. But the teacher can set up a certain kind of guideline, and within that the student can go and find her own directions and all that. But instead of that, it becomes either too restrictive or too open ended. Both are not useful at all as a teaching aid, or as a pedagogic practice. So that's what I feel.
I agree with you. um, So now I want to sort of come into your practice. You are known for your multidisciplinary approach to art and art practice, and you have repeatedly referred to your studio as a lab. And what are the sort of possibilities that enable you to seeing your studio as a lab where you work on your art to be a lab and not a artistic studio? Would you tell us more about that?
No, I emphasize this idea of a lab when talking about my studio, because It is a place where the statement always is what if. It is not about what is already there, what already happened, and then I go on repeating myself. But I can keep questioning what is that I can do more, or what if I do this, what will happen? So there is this enormous sense of curiosity and enormous sense of not settling down with ready answers. So much of art that is happening around me is an auto completion. It is like when you're messaging or emailing, as you do half a sentence, the system is telling you what to do. Many artists have developed this kind of practice where they know where the work will end up. Even as they're beginning, they know the ending. So I want a position where I can hold on to the tentativeness for as long as possible, so that I can keep exploring and pushing it further and further. Otherwise, you know where it is going, so there is no fun, at least for me. So that is why I also have problem with the idea of signature style, or having this idea of um, predictable kind of recognizable mannerisms which artists involve themselves in. So I try to avoid as much as possible those kind of directions. And I try to, like, let's say if I get an idea, I don't know whether it's going to succeed or fail, but I'll still do it. Many times it fails. Many times what you thought as a beautiful idea or a fantastic idea, it's almost like a masterpiece, and you start working on it and you realize it is not going anywhere in a day or two. Sometimes it takes a week, but it's not going anywhere. So then there is a learning that is happening, and then you modify that idea, you make it happen. So it's like a problem solving method. Then I also bring in the idea of making as thinking. It is not just the idea that came as a flash to you in a moment, but the idea that is engaging with the medium, engaging with the making process, and then keeps transforming. So the idea gets transformed in the way of making itself, and then it becomes a final work. Okay, so there is this body as in the material, and then there is the idea which is the immaterial thing. So both are coming together to create a kind of experience. Again, so it's very interesting that when I do something in a material, the material itself is still it's a dead material. It doesn't have a life, but you're infusing life into that through the language that you use, language as in the visual language that you use, the way you use it, etc. So the same or similar kind of meaning or similar kind of experience happens in viewers' mind or viewers' experience. That is a very interesting thing. What you start as an immaterial idea or as a flash of for this one, it gets embedded or it gets embodied in material, and then similar kind of experience gets transferred on to the viewer. So I think that process is very interesting. And for me, that's why the making is very important. It is not just an idea so I think we'll talk about my books later. But for me, making is important. And the idea, and I follow in a way, after some time, the material starts uh, having its own personality. You cannot do everything and anything with it. It has got a certain logic. You have to follow the logic. Then you go forward. Then it opens up as a certain work. And when you do one work, it also brings a certain kind of perspective for you on the earlier works. Like for example, the last 3 years or so, I've been working with paper painting or pulp painting kind of technique, where I made the work very tactile. It's very vulnerable. It's very almost fragile looking and all that. So when I started doing this, I started looking at my earlier work in a very different way. But only after working for 2 3 months, then suddenly one day I realized, oh my God, this is a very different direction. Something else is happening here. Even then, it was not clear. But as you keep engaging with the medium, engaging with the work, things starts opening up, and then. So I think when I say lab, the idea is to allow oneself to fail, allow oneself to experiment, allow oneself to make that leap of imagination, so that you don't know how it will work, but you still make that effort, bring the resources, put the time, and then see where it goes. So to put it in a nutshell, to William Kentridge says it very nicely. How does one protect the tentativeness or the when things are not very clear? It is not clear. It's okay. It is confusing. It's okay. But you're still going ahead. I think that position is very interesting and important for me, so that new things can come. If you're operating from a known position, like how the teacher is teaching you what he already knows for 20 years, a similar kind of thing will happen in my work. So only if I'm ready to keep pushing myself, then the new and new imagery, new kind of language, new kind of work will come from my studio.
Sir, so for work, you have traveled all over the world. You have attended many courses, many workshops, and you have seen art happening, creating exhibitions up closely. So I'm very curious to know, after spending all this time consuming art, making art, what is your idea of what makes something contemporary, what makes art contemporary, or what is not contemporary art?
Okay,
What is that?
so the word I would use is prosumer, because I'm consuming and then I'm producing both. That is the word which people use now in relation to social media and all, because we are at at one level you are producers, and another level you are consumers, so called prosumer. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I've been to many countries, seen quite a lot and all that. Increasingly, what I feel that the visual language is becoming more and more uh, global in that sense. The question is, how do I bring my lived experience into that work? Like there may be 100 people who work with paper. There are at least few of them who work with pulp painting technique and so on. So at the first instance, it may look like, oh, this is already done, or this something like this is being done. But when you go deeper into that, then you realize the context from which I'm coming from, and my lived experience, which I'm bringing into my work. That is where I think the position of being a contemporary as well as having a authentic position for oneself comes. Otherwise, it's very easy nowadays, which I do a lot of students doing. They keep on browsing and then almost anything and everything you can see, and they don't understand the conceptual background for any kind of work, and they just pick up something. Initially it's okay, as a trigger you can pick it up, but at some point you have to start absorbing it, making it your own, and then align it with your experience and your background, where you come from. Otherwise it's just a imitation of some kind of there's a lot of tricks which people are involved in creating imagery. These tricks, in the sense, it looks like a very interesting image when you look at it, but when it doesn't have a recall value after that initial interest in the work. Then you forget it, because there is no intense experience or intense engagement that is uh, involved in the work. So in that sense, my yardstick is that, is this artist coming from very authentic position. It may look like other kind of art, doesn't matter, because at this age of globalization, there is no way you can make it so exclusive that there is no tinge of anything else that is happening around. That is not going to happen. But I want to know where she is coming from or where he is coming from, and then I also look at a body of work. I don't look at one work and decide whether this person has got anything to say per se. So that is the way I look at the contemporary art. So whenever I find one work interesting, I go check for more works by the same artist and see the whole pattern, and then try to understand the language that the artist is using, and then make sense of that. But this is my yardstick. Where is the artist coming from, and what is his or her authentic experience? When I say authentic, that lived experience has to come through. Otherwise, it becomes too verbose. It becomes too kind of borrowed, and all that stuff.
I agree. So, sir, when I was looking through your art, a recurring theme is the uh, the Kannada script as a, you use the Kannada script as a structural element of your artworks. So how did this come into being, and what is, and would you call yourself a regional artist? And you are actually very active in this sort of discussion on the history of art in Karnataka, and I have read those articles. So how, what is your take on using the script, especially the Kannada script, as a structural element in your artwork?
Okay, so the moment you use word like regional, immediately there is a sense of hierarchy that comes in terms of, like, let's say people say Hindi is the national language. I'm sorry, Hindi is not the national language. Hindi is one of the languages of India, and Kannada is not a regional language. Kannada is a vernacular language. So the way we use the word, like, there is this sense that if you show in Delhi, it's a national show, and if you show it in Bangalore, it's a regional show. I don't agree with that. Not in this age, right? Because people it can be seen everywhere, but it also brings in the kind of power hierarchies, like if, like between New York or London, Paris, and Delhi. Delhi is still seen as a regional power. Look at the bigger scene of things. So if you show in New York, it becomes a more important show than if you show in Delhi. And then if you show in Bangalore, I'm talking about a bigger screen. I'm not coming to conclusion. But and then if you show it in Gulbarga or Dharwad or anywhere else, then it's even further down. So that means the position that an artist gets is also linked to economics, politics, historical, factors and all that. And it is not just about, like I've spoken about this in other interviews. If Picasso was born in Africa in another time, would he have been an important artist? Right? So why the African or other kind of art centers don't get as much say in deciding what is the trend and what is the happening thing and so on, right? So there have been studies which show that the wealth accumulated from colonial power, which is in Europe and then North America, that is working in the kind of background in deciding the power centers of art, being Paris and London and New York and so on. And then there are huge so Binales and other power centers which are happening there. So, because you use the word regional, I had to bring in all this, because art is not separate from the power hierarchies and language hierarchies also. If I write in English, it's different. If I write in Kannada, it's different. So those are the kind of things. So coming to my writing in Kannada, I studied in Kannada language till seventh as a medium of instruction till seventh standard, and then I switched over to English. But I continue to write in Kannada, articles and poetry and short stories and things like that. So that was continuously happening. So my engagement with Kannada language is very intense and very elaborate, and a lot of my reading happens in Kannada. We have some of the almost like novel worthy kind of writers in Karnataka. Again, because of the power structures, it doesn't happen. Like Shivaram Karan should have got a Nobel, or Kuvempu should have got a Nobel, and so on. They don't get it because it is not in English, and all those things are there. So my worldview largely comes from Kannada, and then of course English, because I did a MA in English literature much later after I finished my art school. So my reading comes from those two languages, but I also read in different disciplines. So I do a lot of artist books where I use text as part of my work. So I used to use text as part of my work, even in painting, in artist books, and when I did other kind of work. So when I was doing this pulp painting, I was exploring this pulp painting technique in 2023 and 24. I wanted to see if that is possible to bring in some kind of text, and then I related to poetry by Kannada poets like Adiga, Kuvempu, and all this, and then I started writing it. And when I started writing it, then I realized that it is no more anyway, if you don't know Kannada, it is still a form for you. Like if I don't know Malayalam or Telugu or Variya, the form that is written will remain a form for me. It doesn't generate a meaning. Right? So that is the kind of the problem with using a language in any work of art. But in my work of art, I was deliberately trying to make Kannada language, the form of the Kannada language, as a form rather than a readable this one, so that it becomes part of a visual language rather than a textual language. You know that Kannada language is there. You can almost see it, and occasionally you can read some parts of it. But it has become a visual now. It is no more a readable kind of text. So in that sense, the Kannada language has got adopted in my work. And then the other thing is when people write on paper, paper is a passive surface on which you are making an active marking, mark making, which is then visually seen and you produce a sound and then you understand that as a language. Okay. So what I am doing is the paper becomes a active surface and rather an active element, and then that becomes the or that merges with the text. So that's how you can see that it's a Kannada language there, but you can't read it. So that it's like a very again tentative position which can be read in multiple ways. I wanted that kind of tentativeness in the way I use the language.
Um, so, sir, um, I was reading about how you were about the work you did about your father, and you know how human relations are so fragile, and how you there is a conversation happening between you and him, like both sides are present there. So, would you like to talk about that work a bit?
It's yeah, very very important work for me because two things happened there. One, of course, the first version of the work which I did about my father, I used the dhoti or the panche and what we call mundu also. In Kannada, we call it panche, the white cloth that he used to use. I grind that and then I made the pulp from that. And then I made the sheets from that. In the sense, it's an intensely personal relation, to him. Okay, that is one thing. So papers were made from that. And second, I also use this Janevu thread, like what we call Janivara in Canada, which the Brahmins wear. I was born in a Brahmin family, but I don't follow it, and I removed the thread for long ago. And that was one of the main contesting points between me and my father, taking off the thread, and so I cut that, which is a sacrilege, and then I use it like a line between those cloth pieces. And then it was also an imagined dialogue, sometimes which I had not recorded anywhere. Like he would say something, and then I would have responded to that directly or indirectly. So I use those dialogues to kind of create a landscape between what kind of interactions we had between each other. And then in his diary, he had written about me, so which I saw later. Where I used it as part of my book. So one viewpoint is what he saw, what he said about me, and the second thing is what I'm saying about him. So it's like a dual dialogue which is coming into the book. And no father son relationship is all hunky dory. There are some issues which are not resolved, or there are issues of contesting things and all. And me being, there was a certain sense of rebellion when I was 15, 16, 17. So which is still kind of retained to some extent in me and my thinking, uh, especially any authority, authorized religion and things like that, which I try to which I go against. So that was one of the contesting points between he was a staunch believer in Hinduism and right wing politics and ritualistic practices and all that, and I didn't believe in them. So after some time, I realized there is no point in talking about it. So we didn't talk about it at all. But that became one of the, like he said, go to RSS. I had stopped going to RSS long ago. or he said go to temples, I didn't go to temples and things like that. So it became like a dialogue between me and him. What was interesting for me is when I showed it in public domain, which I thought it was a very very personal book. When I showed it in public, people felt that it was their relationship with their father. Some of them cried when they were reading the book. Then I realized that even an intensely personal experience can be, you know, transformed in such a way that others can come in and then take part in that. And then I had this show called Shadows Left Behind. Entire show was about my parents and my brother. My mother had passed away in 2017. So I had made some works about her, then books about my father, and works about him, and then my brother who had passed away early. So just after my father passed away. So this entire show was about the how does one remember people with patterns and sounds and objects and text and even smell, because I had kept the sandal soap as part of the exhibition. Then I'd used this typewriter sound as part of my father's book, because he was a typist, and I could, one of the strong sound in my ear always is that typing sound. The way the typing is happening, and the end of each page, then there's trun sound that comes in, and the next line comes. All those. So I'd use that as part of the sound. So again, people came there, and they were able to connect with their loss, even though I was talking about my parents and my loss. So in that sense, it was a great lesson for me to to find a middle ground between intensely personal experience and what can be universal experience. So that was my learning, and then my experience in doing the book, and then putting that up in the outside world.
So, you have repeatedly said how important it is that we read history to, and I just had this question that you have mentioned that the artist should be, in order to get their authentic experience, the artist should be drawing from their living experience. And you have told us about how you have made the works about your family and the lows and that grief. So how important is subjectivity in art, and where does the society come into it? You, because you said about the, about an individual experience and the connection between, and how it becomes a universal experience. And in all this theoretical framework, where does the society come in? What is the social aspect of it?
So the next person who is standing to me is the society. No, so society need not be an anonymous large entity. It can be people around me. If there are 100 people coming to my show, they are the society in that sense, right? So if I have to answer to you at multiple levels, one is that I agree that we have failed um to bring people to our museums and galleries. Our schools are not done. Like I have this complaint that when you make children paint, you are just making them to paint. They know how to paint. They don't know anything about art, because you don't take one artwork to the classroom. You're not even discussing about it. You're not even making them excited about looking at an image, decoding an image or feeling for an image. Nothing is happening. So just because you make people paint or do some clay modeling will not immediately or automatically give them visual language sense. They know how to paint, that's all. They know how to make clay modeling. But unless you're able to take it further, you're not creating a large set of people who can appreciate art in galleries, in museums, or even if they see a mural in a public place and things like that. So we have not created public or publics to appreciate art. Our system or the ecosystem, there are various reasons for that, because our poverty levels and number of people living in the country and so on and so forth. But if you go abroad, especially Europe or America, people bring their children as a weekend activity to museums. They sit there, they paint, so it becomes like a habit. I think that we have not cultivated. And then from time to time we keep doing this thing, that bringing art to public. Like I had a couple of shows where I'd gone, the exhibition happened in a mall, but people in the mall didn't know it was an art exhibition. Again, same set of artist community was there to see the art, but the people who were there in the mall, they were more interested in the mermaid or some other kind of, image which was there, more populist kind of image. So we are not we have failed in a way to create an ecosystem to link people to art and art experience. Some extent reading is still happening, but even that is going now very quickly. So having said that, subjectivity is part of the creation of an artwork. If it is too objective, then it will become a statement, right? If I say stop war, or don't kill or something like that, it's a very objective statement. There is no ambiguity, there is no there is no any kind of nuance, nothing is there. It's objective, but it is useless as an artwork. So for me, an artwork is about being subjective, but how much, at what level you can connect with others, or how can you bring an audience and a viewer to partake in the artwork, is a question that an artist has to address at various levels.
Sir, you have said that because of the given the fragility of paper as a medium and the sort of artworks you do, that there is not much interest from the market about your art. And then you said it's sort of liberating because then it makes you feel like you can do whatever you want. And I was quite amused by this, as in how that sort of a distance from the market, how does it liberate an artist from that sort of expectations, and how does it push their a practice? Could you tell us a bit more about it?
I don't know why you're amused about it, but it's a fact. It's a fact that we, especially in the Indian collector base, there are very few who can buy, who would like to buy paper works of art done in paper, because mm, you know because of not right information. That the kind of paper I do will survive 7 to 100 years very easily, because it's done archivally, it's done with proper methodology and all that. But the perception is that it will, and also the expectation that something has to live forever. Like if it's a stone sculpture or a canvas sculpture, the assumption is that it is going to last for a longer. So the emphasis from the market side is on longevity, and not other aspects, which I cannot contest. But there are more and more people who appreciate paper work now, and then they're coming forward and they're buying. So it is not to say that I don't want to sell. It is not to say that I want to earn some money from art and things like that. But this is the situation I am in. So I might as well make the most out of it. Okay. But I also see that people who sell a lot have their own problems. Like there is a certain expectation from the market, so they have to follow the trend. From their own side, they may fear that if I change this, they may not be accepted and so on. So those are internal kind of issues that may happen to an artist. Not that every artist who is selling is address having that kind of problem. But I said, if I'm not selling, I might as well do whatever I want to do. Who cares? So that gives me enormous freedom to think like that, and I'm enjoying the freedom. And I mentioned again in another interview that at some point I realized that I have burdened my work too much. After some years, like initially when you're a student, you're just enjoying the work. Then you start building up the expectation from the work that it has to sell, it has to give you, some amount of popularity and recognition, validation, and so on and so forth. So then you're expecting too much from the work. So if you start, unpacking all of that and do the work just for the sake of, a certain kind of enjoyment, certain kind of pleasure that you get in doing the work, that is good enough for me at the first level. If somebody likes it, if they buy, and if I get an award, that is good enough. Like the sovereign art thing, which I'm very kicked about now. I hope to buy. I hope to win that award. If I don't get, I will not cry, but I would like that validation, right? So there is no harm in if somebody likes my work and buys and all that. But if they don't do, I'll still continue to work. That is my position. And to do that, I'm not really dependent on the outside triggers all the time. So the triggers are internal, and so that I can continue. And you can say that it's a defense mechanism which I've built within myself, so that I can be sane, not comparing all the time, not thinking about all the money which I could have made if I did some other kind of work and so on. So it's in a way you can say that I am at peace with whatever I'm doing. This is what you're going to get. If something comes, something more comes, then I'm very happy. If it doesn't come, it's still okay. So this sovereign thing, which Lena had nominated my name, I'm very happy. I'm thrilled that that I was going through the works of other artists, all very strong set of artists there. I'd be very happy if I win the award. But even the recognition itself is good, in the sense that I feel validated. That if after doing 40 years of work, somebody is recognizing your work, and so I like it. So that gives you a little more energy for that moment and for some time. But the problem with outside trigger or outside validation is that after some time it will subside, and then you need something else, like how they say about mobile thing. No, it's like dopamine is being fed to you all the time. So I should not be looking for dopamine kick from outside all the time. If I'm working from as an internal mechanism, then it's possible that I will last longer in the field rather than you know comparing for validation or waiting for validation from outside. That is the defense mechanism, you can call it, but it's working well. And it's in a way it's a bravado that I say, okay, if I don't sell, it's okay. I can do whatever I want. It's like in your face. I can tell you that. I like that kind of rebel mentality, but yeah. But the
No,
fact is also on the other side. It could have been otherwise.
but I really find what I found interesting was that this is how you chose to react to it.
Yeah,
It
it's very
gave,
important. In any
yeah.
given situation, how you react to I can go on complaining endlessly. Say nobody is buying, nobody is doing this, nobody is, doesn't make sense. Then you will feel more and more down every day. And if you take a counter position, then I say, okay, it's okay. I'll do my own work and then survive.
So, so I would just want to pick your brain regarding how you explore the idea of form and scale through a medium like this pulp paper, like paper pulp paintings and that sort of thing. Like, what are the possibilities you are pushing?
Okay, so for me, the idea of form, material, and then content, the unity of them is very important. Like how they're coming together, and is it adding a meaning? Like, for example, the work which I did with my father, if I had done with leather, the whole thing would have gone. Because I did with paper done by the cloth that he was wearing, then you are adding to the whole meaning, and then it comes together. So that unity or coming together of the medium I'm using, the form that is taking, form as in, it can be a book, it can be any other shape, scale, etc. And then what is it I'm trying to say with that is very important. And then when I started working with this pulp painting technique, I realized it has got enormous possibilities, because the conventional paper making is done in a vat. You have this pulp fibers which are floating in water in a tub, and then you pick up the fibers in a mesh, and then you transfer it onto a piece of cloth. But that is dependent on the tub size. Like if I have to make a 5 feet big sheet, then my tub has to be bigger, that much of pulp, and you need so much more manpower to lift it up and so on. So, in that sense, the pulp painting has given me a kind of a different way of achieving scale without going through that conventional, because I'm intervening at the sheet making level itself. The conventional sheet making or the process is this, where you have the things floating in tub, and then sheet forming, it is called. So what I am doing is I control the viscosity at the level of making pulp, and then I start drawing with in a nozzle on a plastic sheet, and I can make like in Denmark, where I had gone for a residency. I made a 27 feet by 15 feet work. So it is just one piece of paper. Technically, it's one piece. So it's possible to scale it up. And then what I'm interested in is, how does one respond to a very small scale, very tiny, very intricate kind of work, and how do you respond to a large scale work? Because it's about human scale, what you call anthropometry in architecture. Like when you go to some of these old buildings, historical buildings, you get the sense of awe because of your relationship with the scale of the building. You feel either small or you feel very enchanted and all. Because of the new technique of pulp painting, I'm able to now scale up my works, and I think scale is very important to bring a certain kind of experience. So if you're standing in front of a very large work, the experience that you have is very different compared to, let's say, when you're looking at a miniature in a museum, where there are a lot of details, you have to go close up and see and things like that. So in that sense, I was bringing the idea of Fatehpur Sikri, where you stand in a Buland Darwaza. Is that correct? Buland Darwaza. So you stand there, and then it seemed the king used to welcome people who came to meet him, standing in that step. And then that means you're looking up to the king, and then so yeah, he is looking down upon you. And in some of the palaces, you can't enter and even in some of the temples, the temple door height is kept low, so that you have to bend down and then enter the space. So in architecture, between anthropometry, what we call, that is human scale, and then the kind of experience that one can create by designing the spaces around the people or visiting the space is very well used. Like how much of light, how much of volume, internal volume, and so on. So I'm quite used to that kind of language. So I was trying to use it to my best possible, what shall I say, best possible usage. So for some of the works, I want to enlarge the scale, so that when you stand in front of the work, you have that sense of awe. Although this, my God, this is one big piece of paper. So first of all, the common idea of paper is in A4 size or maximum a drawing sheet size paper, which is white color, or at the most some color kind of paper. So when you stand in front of these pieces, like as I was mentioning in Denmark, I did this 27 feet by 15 feet work, and then we did it in a room, entire room. I did the work, and then we rolled it up, and then we got it down, and then we displayed the work, and then people would just stand there and then look at the work, like almost, is this possible? And that sense of wonder, that sense of, paper has this very fragile kind of quality, it's almost like no weight and airy, and that kind of thing, so it becomes very experiential. The content will come later, but the immediate response is to the presence of the work itself, which I think is very important at this moment in my work. Meaning and all that will start seeping in later. The secondary, tertiary layers can be added, but the initial response to the work is very visceral. Like, how does it make you feel? That's that sense of tactility, sense of wonder about the materiality and all that. So that I am emphasizing more and more on that. So in that regard, the scale is very important. And to make certain statements also, you need scale. For example, I made this work which was shown in the public arts project in Bangalore, which Kamini had curated. It's about going round and round without landing or without taking off. That is the situation. So the work was about, when we go through emotional, this one, emotions rise in you. Like, let's say I have a good ice cream, then you can't hold on to that moment of joy. In a second, that the joy is gone. Immediately, it becomes memory. What was an expectation, then it becomes experience and becomes memory, and then you want to have that experience again. So you go through the whole cycle of that experience, whether it's the joy or whether it's having sex or whether it's having partnership and love and things like that. So because you can't hold on to that experience, which is very ephemeral, which is temporary, you are going in circles again and again. So I made the work which was rotating, which was like Buddhist prayer wheels and things like that. It was a 15 feet work, and then you look up, it's one big piece of work, and then in that I had written all the names related to emotions in Kannada. It can be anger, like for example, somebody hurt you, somebody said some hurtful thing, and that hurtful sentence was told to you 10 years ago, but in your mind it's going round and round again and again. You are recycling it, you are living in it. So that was the so for me, that form of circling of the work was very important, because the content came out much more strongly in that, and then what was written on it. So initially, you may just see it as a rotating work, but when you realize it is about this particular kind of experience, then the value of the whole form of the whole rotating thing becomes much more meaningful. So the meaning can be achieved in multiple ways. The initial meaning can be about the materiality, scale, and the initial experience, and so on. And then later, I can bring in layers of other meanings. And if somebody is interested, they can go dig deeper into it. And they also they can go look at my other works which relate to the similar kind of issues. So all that is possible. I don't know whether I answered your question and we got digressed a lot.
So, sir, to sort of wrap this up, I want to see what is your advice for your young contemporary people who are trying to be artists, who are trying to find themselves in this vast Indian art scene. What would be your advice? What is something you think they should know, or you have hoped that you should have known when you were young?
So difficult thing to do at various levels, because first the senior living artist is I think 90 plus. So by that standard, I'm still very young. I'm just mid-career artist, if you want to call that, and I don't want to label myself old or even senior because of vanity reasons. Anyway, so the thing is, it's very difficult to advise others what they have to do. I don't like doing it, or I don't think it works. Because I tell you why. Because many students come to me, many young artists come to me, bring their portfolios. I do this portfolio reviews. They bring their work, and I talk to them for 2 hours, 3 hours. I do this analysis called SWOT analysis. That means what is the kind of strength that is there in the work, what is the weakness, what is the opportunity, where it can go wrong in terms of threat. So I don't tell them it's good or bad or ugly in one sentence. I try to analyze it, parse it, look at it from different angles and all that. So I do the SWOT analysis when I do the portfolio, this one. So such a session would be much more meaningful for anybody who wants to talk to me, instead of giving a blank open statement. But in general, I would say one thing that will see you through is grit. If you can, and in another, I've written it down, and then it was used in, Varma's interview also. The idea of tenacity is very important. The idea of audacity is also very important. Like if you can just imagine what right you have to come to a place where Picasso lived, Vermeer lived, Rembrandt lived, and think that you can make a good work of art. So that is absolute audacity, right? So these are the greats which have gone before us, and then or even some of the miniature painters, and so on and so forth. So much has happened before, and then you think that you can just come and do something. And that's absolute audacity. You need that audacity, otherwise you can't enter the field. So, and then you need audacity to go against systems. When system is trying to tell you you have to do this, various market system will tell you, teaching system will tell you. So you need that sense of rebellion in you. That is very important. How you do that, it's a different question. And then you need tenacity to sustain over a long period of time. Very few artists have got very early and quick success. Most of them have struggled in their own ways for 2 decades, 3 decades. Sometimes you may have the material wealth, but you need to struggle to find your own language, to find your own, voice and things like that. So holding on to it, I think, is very important. Showing up to work every day, I think, is very important in my scheme of things. I plan for the week, I plan for the month. Plan in the sense, what will I do this week in the studio? I have some rough idea how I spend my time. So I think I read this somewhere. How you spend your days is how you spend your years. So if you're focused on your work, it need not be like a blind focus. It's just that you're so engaged in it, day in and day out. You're doing it. But there are some days you're down. Some days you're depressed. That is fine. You pick up and go. But at the end of the day, you show up, and then you engage with the work process. And belief in the process, I think, is also very important. That it will actually show you some kind of light somewhere along the way. If not today, maybe further down the line. So I think that belief in the process is very important. You can't have quick results. That I'm very sure. I don't know whether it counts as a advice, but if people come to me to, can you put me in a gallery? Can you give me connections and things like that? That I find it very difficult because uh, it is very difficult to transfer some of the social capital that you have to others. Wherever it's possible, I do that also. I introduce people to galleries and all that I do that. But sometimes it is not possible. Even when I ask others also, they can't do it. So these things happen. I don't know how, but it happens. At a very fundamental level, work, I think, engaging with the work is very over and over, year after year. So and it is not guarantee that even at the end of all this, something will happen, but that is the least one can do, I think. There is this thing called necessary and sufficient. Engaging with the work is necessary, but is that sufficient? I don't know. There are other factors which are involved in that to become quote unquote successful and all that. But yeah.
So, sir, we are sort of ending to and nearing the end of our conversation today, and I just want to take a moment and appreciate your time and your graciousness in sharing your ideas, sharing, answering my questions with so much patience and talking about your work. I have got to know a lot more about your work, and I am so grateful. And I'm sure our listeners will also appreciate the sort of engagement you have with not just your art, but with the greater art world. So,
Pleasure
with
is
that,
mine. That it's nice to talk to nice to talk and share my ideas about my work, my feelings about my work, and where it's going. And so it's a multi-dimensional world that one lives in. So in that sense, yeah, we were able to cover quite a bit, and I suppose it will uh, generate more interest in my work, and then people will go see the website or see the actual work in some exhibition and things like that. Yeah, of course, there is always my social media handles where they can come and see the work. Yeah, thank you for doing this.